Yo, what is going on, everybody, and welcome back to Shoot the Shit Uncensored. I am your host, the dad bod, fucking god, the bald, the beard, the fucking beautiful Piers Austin, and you ain't seeing double. It's my brother from another mother, the play-by-play to my color. It is Cam Smith. What up, brother? Jesus, I just flowed some shit straight off the cuff, man. Maybe I should become a rapper.
It's like you're a commentator or something. Like that's brilliant.
Oh, thanks, man. I know. But I'm excited to have you part of this conversation, bro, because we talk a fair bit through messages and stuff, bro, and I really enjoy our conversations, about wrestling. And the last FWA show, I got started talking to Massive Q, and I really liked his story and his background and also his opinions on the wrestling business. And I was like, fuck it, let's get the both of you on for this amazing conversation. But before we get into it, I need to take a quick second and thank our amazing sponsor who is keeping this show possible every single week. And that is healthvape.com. Now, healthvape.com is your healthy vaping alternative. All of their products are no nicotine, no addictive or harmful chemicals. They help restore your energy while giving you the vital boost you need to get through your day. Guys, go and check out healthvape.com. Check out all their vape and pod products. Use that promo code MWAPOD to get a 10% discount on your final purchase. Also, ladies and gentlemen, make sure you please hit that subscribe button, like, share, comment, all that good shit. Hit the bell to stay notified. And if you're listening on a podcast platform, please give us a 5-star review. I appreciate it. It helps us reach, more amazing people and bring on more amazing people for more incredible conversations. So help a brother out. Get it done. But Cam, let's get on with the show, brother, and let's get into our conversation with Massive fucking Q. Good evening, gentlemen. What's going on?
Oh, I'm here on the show, so what else do I need?
Well, we're glad to have you on, man. Thank you for coming on. Both of you, thank you for coming on tonight.
Anytime.
Thank you for having us.
So, dude, we started talking, the last FWA show, Q, and I really was interested in your background. You've been wrestling for 17 years, right? Like you started.
Yes, I started training in I want to say 05 because unfortunately, I was. I'm immediately starting. I'm immediately going through two different stories. Basically, when I got into wrestling, Mick Foley was my guy. And so when his books came out, I read them, and in one of them he had my top 10 tips for being a wrestler. And when I decided I wanted to become a wrestler after one of his matches, I read it, and one of them was get a college degree as an American. And unfortunately, so I sort of mentally interred that as I should finish my university degree before I start wrestling. So yeah, I started training in 05, I think, or 04, when I was 24, which is a lot later than a lot of the other wrestlers. And because I finished my uni degree, and I thought I should do that first. So I did that, then started training. So I started a lot. So yeah, in theory, I could be a 20-year vet by this point if I'd started as 18, or 16 or 18, like most people do. So yeah, I didn't start training until 2004. Went through a year of training, and then began in 2005. I'm pretty sure, or possibly a 5 or 6. I don't know. It's been a while. I've taken a few knocks to the head. And even then, it was my first. Well, my first official match was a surprise to me because I didn't know about it when I turned up. It was like February in the 05 or 06. And basically, as I got to the venue, it was like, "You've got a match tonight." Like, I do. Oh, okay. I have no gear apart from boots and knee pads. Oh, don't worry about it. So I went out there in like a red it was a grey t-shirt, shorts, knee pads, and wrestling boots. So the wrestling boots, the knee pads, they're the only two bits I'd had yet. And I went out there and I didn't die and I didn't completely suck, but I really had no idea what I was doing because it was very much a case of, again, I was just turning up expecting to work security or maybe, work the door. And then just, no, you've got a match tonight. Oh, wonderful. Okay. And then boom. Technically, and I'm one of the few people who actually thinks that they have 3 first matches because I consider the first proper match that I had was with JT Robinson in a high school gym in front of 10 people. But on the basis it was the first match where I had gear, I had an opponent, and I had a match where I kind of knew what I was doing. So this was like a few months after my first match. And I consider that sort of the first proper match that I had. I had a couple of matches sort of as Massive Matt Forcino, which was my original name. It was against my very first match that I talked about was against a guy called Super Crimson Mask, who was up from Canberra. It was a gimmick that somebody else had, and I'm not sure if I can actually name them. Well, I can name them, but I'm not sure I'm supposed to. Just I don't know. But then I had like 1 6-person tag, and then the JT match after I'd gotten gear and everything. Yeah. The first match, like the original first match, was like near the end of my training. I trained. This is what happens to me. I'm just warning you now. I get on stories and I get on tangents because, you need to understand stuff. So just to warn you ahead of time that you may end up getting like 4 stories worth in one story.
Let me interrupt there.
Yes.
So you started training 0405.
Yes.
Who was your trainer when you broke in? Was it?
Yes. Well, it was AWF. It was TNT. Was who ran the stall, who ran the company, and was running the stall. Sort of the main 2. He was overseeing the training, but he was especially at the start, he wasn't like. I'm trying to work out how to phrase this and not come off a bit of a dick. It's not that he wasn't like hands on everything, sort of boom boom boom. Like he wasn't doing every single thing. Sure. JT Robinson and Billy Flyswat were also involved as well. Also J Law a bit. And they were sort of like the main sort of teachers in the first, because it was divided up into 3 sections. It was like beginner, intermediate, advanced. And beginner was your standard, learn how to bump, learn how to run the ropes, learn how to do your basic shit. Then the intermediate was like, okay, now you learn how to do moves, how to do some stuff. Advanced was where Dredd really sort of stepped in and was much more hands-on, because that was where we worked on personas, we worked on characters, we worked on specific moves, and we sort of worked on getting me fine-tuned in inverted commas, in sort of thing. So although Dredd wasn't super involved in the first sort of, he was there and he was supervised and he was involved, but he wasn't like hands-on all the time. So I sort of tended to say that Dredd trained me, but Billy Flyswat and JT Robinson had a hand in it. And then also J Law and a couple of the other guys who were around at the time, chipped in. But they're sort of like the main 3 who sort of trained me. Because this is before like PWA existed, or possibly just I think definitely just before they existed. And so like AWF was like I Googled Australian wrestling and it came up and was and it had a website and it looked somewhat professional, and I went out there and we went from there and it was all good. But to get back to the original point that I was wheeling my way through, my very 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 first match was before I'd even finished training. At the end of the year, it was the Australian Advertising Awards show. It was basically the advertising, not a union, but association had their award show, as you do. And for this year, they decided it was going to be wrestling themed. So they had a wrestling ring, and they had a bunch of the wrestlers. And since I was huge and stood out, I was one of them. So like my first ever actual match in sort of anything beyond just training was against Billy Flyswat. It went 30 seconds. We were representing advertising people, or advertising sort of companies, and it was to announce who had won the award. And we went in there and we wrestled for 30 seconds, and he beat me with a moonsault and bloodied up my nose. And that was my first official match. And then we had a battle royal at the end of the night to sort of, as who was the advertising team of the year, and everyone took turns to give me a nice big chop. As this is the welcoming committee. So I've technically, I believe I've had 3 different first matches.
Wow,
that's the end of that very long and involved story.
But like you said, like your first match, you were wearing like a grey t-shirt and like
yes,
sweatshorts, right? I feel like that was like the indie pro wrestler like uniform from the early 2000s. You know what I mean? Like if you watch a lot of indie shows, like I love watching like retro indie shows from early 2000s because you see a lot of that shit.
Oh yeah, I'm sure that if you sort of viewed it and from outside, it just looked like I was some indie worker who was like, I'm edgy and I'm sort of I don't need to have a fancy outfit because I'm cool and all that sort of. Although the way that I'm acted, I'm sure was completely invalidated that, but that you could at least make that argument. I'm sure that I'm the only person who knows just how unprepared I was for at the time.
Yeah, but like, do you feel like after that match with JT Robinson was like, you said you think of that as like your real first match because you had gear, you had everything going. Like, did you walk away from that match happy with it? Like, or were you like your biggest critic? Like, where were you at?
Well, I'm very much a person who, I'm never I'm happy with matches, but I'm never satisfied with them. If that makes sense. Especially because I know that I have a very different style and a very different sort of set of skills and a set of circumstances to most people. So that I'm probably never going to have a 5-star, indie technical masterpiece. Like that's not the type of wrestler that I am, and I'm fine with that. I'm okay with that, and I understand that not everything has to be like that. There are matches where I've been very satisfied with the job I've done. There have been matches that I think that have been really awesome in terms of the story we've told. There are matches where, I've everyone around me has done amazingly, and I've kept up my end of the bargain. Like there are matches that I'm happy with, but yes, I'm very much a case of we stuffed up on that bit, or we fucked up that bit, or I forgot to do this, or whatever. I'm always sort of focusing on that. Which is not to say that I don't sort of appreciate when I do have a good match or when we do good work, but I feel that you need to sort of be honest and be able to focus on see what went wrong so you can fix it, or you can try to fix it in the next time. And the JT Robinson match was the first match where again I had gear, I felt like a wrestler. Like the first couple of times, I just felt like I was, pretending I was just a rookie who didn't, I was just in there to, bump around and stuff. That was the first match where I actually felt like a wrestler, and so that's why that's the third of my first matches, in my opinion, or at least in my belief. But again, officially, the first match is Super Crimson Mask, who was, was basically a Jason knockoff.
I love some of the gimmicks from that time frame there as well. Yeah. Like it's just wonderful, Like
there was a Twitter thread a while back from like a comedian who was like it found the 2006 AWF roster page, and it was just because it was like you had the Illusionist, you had Traffic, you had
Incognito,
and you had like a bunch of and like Frankie Fettuccine and all those guys.
What was that was like a guy called Tony Kebab or something at one stage.
Tony Kebab, he was a guy. Yes, there was so there was Mad Tony Kebab, and then there was I can never remember. There was like a taller guy who was like L something, who basically got a pretty solid push, and then as soon as he was asked to start losing, he left the company.
Really?
Which, just the occasion. Just there's always a certain sort of weeding out, like especially in training. There's definitely a weeding out process because it's always 30 people, 25 the next week, 22 the next week, 12 maybe get to the end of the session, 8 get to the end of that one, and then in my case I think it was like 2 who dropped through to the end of the advanced and actually got on shows. So it was like me and Rob Best were the only 2. Well, Rob the scientist at the time. Now I think he's technically still wrestling because he went over and wrestled with the Booker T company for a while.
Reality of Wrestling or something.
Yeah, Reality of Wrestling. And he started off as Rob the Scientist, and he became Rob Best. I think he worked as Rob Barnes for a bit. Because that's his name. So he's like the only other guy sort of in my class who got through. So there's always a certain amount of like you always see people drop off, and that continues even after people have gotten on the shows. So there's always a few people who did a few matches in, and they're like, you know what, this sucks. I don't like having to drive a whole bunch of things to and get hurt and not have fun. So stuff it, I'm leaving, and that's fine. What?
Yeah.
Obviously, you don't like to see people leaving. You don't like people being unhappy. But on the other hand, professional wrestling requires a certain amount of sacrifice, physically, mentally, financially, emotionally. And I'd rather have people who aren't happy to not have to force themselves through it out of some sort of desire to be, loyal to the boys or, loyal to the business or all that. Just if you're not happy, you're not happy. Yeah. And obviously that can change, and that people can sometimes get through that. And so if people step away and then come back, that's awesome. But if you step away and you never look back, then I'm just hoping that you're happy with your life, and this is another chapter in your life, and that's that's fine.
See, that kind of happened with me with MMA training. Like I had an injury in 2012 where my knee went from the front of my leg to the side of my leg, and it was like I was out for 18 months, couldn't do anything. Came back like to a new gym, started training and stuff, but mentally, like I was still fucked because I was like I refused to roll with like anyone lower than a blue belt. I was not going to spar with just anybody. I was very selective. And even then, like, I was just like, fuck, I'm not like, I was like, I want to get in there. I want to get to the level of having a fight. Then I was just like, fuck, no, like I'm done. Because by that stage, I was already married. I had a kid on the way, and I'm like,
that's yes,
like no
way. That is a typical sort of it's like mainly the two reasons that people do leave is because they're married or they have an injury. For the most part, like the significant other sort of pulls them out, or an injury gets in and they just sort of lose the nerve, which is again totally fine. Like I understand it that people have to look after their physical bodies. Like I'm very lucky that I've the worst injury I've had was a fractured shoulder, and that was very mild. And that was I just had to hold my arm out like that for 2 months.
Yeah.
And like I've avoided I don't have any neck injuries. Like I've avoided sort of most knee and foot stuff. Like my feet hurt, like my ankles hurt all the time, but that's fine. I'm used to that. But yeah, like I've avoided sort of major injuries, and more importantly, I've never really had injured anyone in the ring, which I think is actually more important. Like if someone has to get injured, it'd rather be me, because I'd hate to, because if someone injures me, like okay, you obviously didn't mean it. It was an accident. It's fine. If I injure someone else, I'm going to feel horrible about that for the rest of my life. So it's like I'd rather sort of if someone has to get injured, I'd rather it be me. But again, touch wood, I've avoided most sort of injuries, and so I haven't had to sort of have that decision of okay, well I could spend the 18 months or whatever to get back, and then do I still want to get in there? And if I risked it, although like in my mind, like if I do ever have that sort of injury, I'm probably going to have to like step away just due to the fact that because of my body, because like again. As a big guy with a lot of weight, I feel like a major injury is going to sort of really impact me a lot harder than everyone else. Like, which is not to say that it doesn't impact on people, but like if I break my leg, that's a lot of lead to break.
Yeah, 100%.
So, but again, touch wood. I haven't had any sort of major injuries apart from the shoulder, and hopefully that continues.
But I think as well, like I've seen you wrestle a couple of times, live on live shows, and one thing that I really like, and I even said this to Buckman when Bucky when he was on, is like he is a big man as well. He doesn't he wrestles as a big man. You wrestle as what your size, what your body shape is, and that to me is like I think can be somewhat missed. It's like you're not really coming off your feet just for something small. Like it's going to be something impactful for you to take that thing. Same with Bucky, you know what I mean? Like that's the thing. I love seeing shit like that, but it's like you see like wrestling in certain promotions like around the world. Like I'm even WWE. You see like a larger performer overselling for a smaller opponent. Not saying that it's not believable that a smaller person can take out a bigger person. There's always the size of the the fight and the dog. but also it's like you have to keep it somewhat realistic. You know, I saw an NXT match where it was like they had this Lash Legend character who's like 6 foot plus, like this big woman. And like she's wrestling someone 5'4", and she's bumping, and just literally feeding into like this, you know what I mean? And I was just like, this is ridiculous.
Like, exactly. Like and especially when you've got, because again, like with my sort of my style, because I always claim that my style is half Andre the Giant, half Bobby Heenan. So basically, big giant stuff and slimy heel shit. Because that's what, you know, I choke people. I bite them. I rip at the eyes and mints. Just I can pick you up and slam you down, but it's so much easier just to choke you out. You know. But anyway, I think that like I can get in there. I could theoretically work a match like anyone else. But you miss out on what makes it special, and especially when it, like, we have the advantage of, like, if all I have to do is stand next to someone, apart from like someone like Bucky or Braxton or whatever, and even then that's a different story. But if I just stand next to someone and they're like up to here on me, that's the story. Like instantly, everyone gets a story. David versus Goliath. How's he going to knock him down? And so you build up to that. And I leaving my feet 9 times out of 10 will get a bigger reaction than like someone coming off the top rope and doing a 450, diamond cutter into a knee. Which is not to say that's not visually impressive and it's not hard as hell, and I admire them. But again, you have to take advantage of the storytelling options that are available to you. And so that's where a guy like me or Bucky, can give you something different in a show. And I totally agree that if just getting me or Bucky in there and just working a normal match with bump and feeds and all that, you're missing out on what you could be doing. And in WWE, part of the long-standing criticism is the fact that they used to. They obviously now in the new regime is slightly different. But the old thing was that Vince only wanted people over 6'4". Problem is, when everyone over 6'4", then no one's big. So you get people who had to work a normal style anyway, because like when if you were 6'6", in any other company you'd be Mr. Giant. In WWE, you're just another bloke. So you would get all the big.
Look at Billy Gunn. He's like 6'5".
Yeah, exactly. And then you see him sort of interacting with like the other AEW guys, and he's like huge. And then you don't remember him as being huge in the Attitude Era. You just remember him as being the slightly taller tag team guy. And so it's like anything. Like having too much of the same thing can lead to issues unless that is specifically what you're going for. Because obviously there was a time in like the early 2000s where you could make a go of it, when like DVDs and stuff were a thing. You could arguably make a go of something like Ring of Honor or something when it first started out. Had a very specific thing of awesome good wrestling all the time, and it was for the most part awesome good wrestling all the time. And and they were able to bring in the Japanese guys, and they were able to bring in Mexican guys, and because it was so different to everyone else, and they cultivated the fan base, it worked. But nowadays, especially when there's so much around, you kind of can't. It's weird how you'd think that when there's more options, you should be able to specialize more, but it's actually the other way around. And the only reason to stand out is to be good at everything now, pretty much.
Yeah.
But this is the time when you've now got AEW, you've now got like New Japan is sort of starting to heat back up. PWA and the Australian companies are making a go of it, and I think that there's a lot more. Yeah, there's a lot more companies, and they need to be able to either be world class at several things or good at everything at this point. Like you can't really get away and just being one trick pony anymore in terms of a company, I think. Just because of the way that now people want everything in one company. Just like like how long have people been complaining that they want women wrestling in New Japan? Like that never was a problem, because it was always like well, it's so good, we don't need women. And now suddenly everyone's like, why aren't there women? Why aren't you giving female wrestlers opportunity? And that's a valid point. But on the other hand, you wouldn't have heard that like 10, 15 years ago.
No.
Because 10, 15 years ago, people would just been like, oh, well, New Japan doesn't do women. That's fine, because they do everything else fine. But it's like now, no, why don't you have a women's division? You need a women's division. And so there is the old argument about shouldn't do what you can't do well. But nowadays you don't have to. At least you have to work at it. You know,
But a company like New Japan could get a lot of talented women over there, like
oh
especially
yeah,
if
I
they
mean,
get into, like the AEW roster. And it's
yeah,
like, you know what, like with all the reports of Thunder Rosa being difficult to work with, okay, no worries, we'll ship you over to Japan for 6 months,
yeah.
and you go fucking work over there.
Well, I mean,
against-
I mean, they own. I mean, they own a company now, don't they? They own a female. I'm pretty sure they own the female company now, and so they're starting to integrate it. Like I think in Wrestle Kingdom, they've said there's going to be like they're introducing an IWGP Women's title, to my knowledge, to my
really?
understanding. Yeah, they are bringing. They're not quite at the stage where there's going to be a women's show. I don't think there's going to be. They're not quite at the point where they have like a women's match on every show, but they are sort of integrating because Utes. I think Japanese wrestling is always very complicated in terms of who owns what. I'm glad I don't have to keep track of it as hard as I used to. But like the parent company owns a female wrestling company, to my understanding, and they are bringing in an IWGP Women's title, which is going to be mainly in that company. But they're going to start to integrate female wrestlers into New Japan very slowly, and so that's part of the thing that people have sort of been commenting on that, and they don't want it delineated like it was in Japan anymore. Japan is very delineated in terms of you had women's companies, you had men's companies. They're now having to, and then you had like outliers like Hustle, which was basically what if Japan did WWE, and that went places. That's the company that had like the Great Muta misting a woman in the crotch, which then made her pregnant when she gave birth to an egg, and inside the egg was Akibono, who was the baby of this woman and the Great Muta. That was an actual thing that happened.
No bullshit.
That was a legitimate angle, and I swear I'm not making that up. That is legitimately how it went. The Great Muta impregnated a woman via mist, who then gave birth to Akibono from an egg.
Cam, did you ever hear about that?
I mean, it sounds like something. Remember the Mark Henry in the hand and like that sort of thing.
Yeah,
that's some cringy.
I mean, look, if I'm incorrect, then I am more than happy to be roasted in the comments, and feel free to tell me on Twitter how much of an idiot I am. You can do that anyway. I'm sure, but if I'm wrong, let me know. But yeah, so getting back to the original point, it's basically at this stage, wrestling companies have to be a lot more diverse and have to be a lot more sort of, because that's what the audience wants. The audience doesn't want to pick and choose. They want to have everything in like one or two companies. So they want things to be, a smorgasbord, which can be good, but on the other hand, it does lead to a certain amount of like this. So you have the the flame wars on Twitter and shit, where people pick a company and suddenly this company is my company and this company is awesome and everyone else sucks. Yeah, and that's the sort of the negative side of it, unfortunately.
That's kind of like the tribalism in wrestling. Like when I had Jay Stevens on, we spoke about this, and it's like you see, AEW fans are like these, bro, like they're just on Twitter, they're on another level. And you know what I mean? And then like they've got like the AEW fans who hate WWE, and then you've got the WWE fans that hate AEW, and they fucking argue online. Like, bro, if I ever need a laugh, I go and check out the comment section in some wrestling groups, bro. And because it's like you just see what they're saying, and it's just like, man, like really, like can't you just enjoy what you're fucking enjoying? Like, why have you got to rubbish something else or troll other people? Just fucking like we all love wrestling, right? Like we all started as marks at one fucking point. So like, why not just accept it and just what? Hey, I like this. You don't like this. Wrestling's subjective. It's okay.
It's like I mean, to be fair, it's not only a wrestling problem. Like it's like I'm part of that I'm in a few different sort of fan circles and like other interests, and it's not just a wrestling thing. Like there are people like this in everything now, because it's an internet, they can do that. But it is a problem. I think that I think even on like Dynamite, there was someone in the front row who had a sign that said "Enjoy pro wrestling," and so just enjoy what you like. And if you don't like something, fine. That's not for you. That's fine. You've got stuff you can enjoy, and unless you hate everything, in which case maybe pro wrestling isn't for you then, and that's fine.
And that
if you don't like it, don't watch it.
Exactly right, Cam. Like anytime I've tried to sit down and watch AEW, and I'm not saying this to bad them. Yeah, it's like I watch it, I get about 5 minutes in, and I just go, nope. and it's not for me.
No,
And
that's fair
you know
enough.
what? I've never needed to go on social media and say how bad it was. I just don't fucking watch it. It's as simple as that.
Exactly. You know, yeah, you don't have to. Yeah, like liking pro wrestling doesn't mean you have to like all pro wrestling, but it doesn't mean you also have to comment on all pro wrestling. Because there's going to be stuff you don't like. Obviously call out when shit is dangerous or like racist or sexist or something. By that point, yes, we should not be tolerating that. But on the other hand, if it's just not your taste, then let it go. Just watch it. Let it go. Just don't worry about it. Listen, it's up to you, and that's fine.
17 years in wrestling, that's a long time, man. And like wrestling has evolved a lot.
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah.
And you mentioned, like just then, like people that were like sexist, racist, whatever it may be, homophobic. How have you found the change and the shift in the culture of pro wrestling over 17 years? Because I can imagine 17 years ago, 2005 is like that. That's pretty much like when the Katie Vick angle was happening in WWE. Like, I may be off a year or so, but I remember it was around that time.
No, yeah.
How have you found the evolvement from where it was when you started to where it is now?
Well, okay, I'm going to be very careful about how I tell this story. But remember how I mentioned back when my first match with the advertising thing.
Yeah.
Afterwards, after we finished, we were in the room that they'd given us as like a locker room, and we were, and they gave us beers, and it was like, I didn't know, like, oh, we get beers after shows. That's awesome, but we got beers, and there was a woman who was with one of the other wrestlers, and while we were sort of chatting, one of the other wrestlers who was there said, "Oh, you should get your tits out," and she did. Whoa. Now, yeah, like this is in the locker room, and it was like, and she again, I'm not going to name names because again, I don't recall exactly who was in the room, so I don't know who was directly involved. And it wasn't like she wasn't like she was forcing it. It wasn't like people grabbed her and ripped her top off or anything. She was, to my understanding, she did it willingly. Like it wasn't something that she was forced to do. But still, it was like that was like my first sort of interaction in a locker room scenario, and that was a bit of a culture shock to me because it wasn't like that, and that would never happen now. Thankfully, no. Like it's very much sort of moved on. Again, I don't remember exactly who was in the room. I don't recall who said what or did what or whatever. So please don't. And I'm not going to name names like this. I don't want anyone to sort of try and deal shit at me. But it was just like that was a very much of a culture shock, and there were sort of examples of like women getting like not sort of not abused or not sort of like not sexually assaulted, but some of the guys would be very sort of aggressive in courting women who would come to start off as training, and most of the time they didn't last possibly because of that. And that's changed a lot for the better. So in terms of like the Australian locker rooms, it is a lot better. And in terms of like the on-air product, I think also, I mean, there's always going to be a certain elements of, like people are always going to be like, I'm not from here, look at my crazy passport. There's always going to be a certain amount of like stuff that is not really sort of okay, but as long as the people involved are okay, like if someone plays it plays into a stereotype and they're doing it willingly and it's good heat and they're happy with it and everyone involved is okay with it, then there's always going to be that certain elements in wrestling. It's just inevitable. We can try and sort of weed out the coarser elements, and we can try and avoid it being the default. Like if someone comes in and they're Indian or or there's some sort of ethnicity, I think we're past the point where that becomes their gimmick. Yeah. Like as well, when I started, that was if you came in and you were Indian, well, that's your gimmick. You're an Indian, or or if you come in and you're Chinese or whatever. that would be your gimmick because that's all you needed because that's what people. Yeah, that was enough. It was only if you happened to be, white straight male that you had to suddenly have to, have something more interesting because, you were default. So luckily we've sort of moved past that in Australia and internationally. So I'm very happy with that. Like I'm not, like just when I came in, Australian wrestling was pretty not dead, but it was very much sort of a case where it would be, it was at PCYCs and maybe the occasional club show, and we used to run Campbelltown, and like if we got 100 people, we were over the moon at that. So obviously, as things have gotten better, we've also improved up in terms of numbers and like awareness and attention and all that. So I'm very happy with how wrestling's evolved. Both in front of and behind the scenes.
You mentioned women turning up to training and yes. Wrestlers being overly aggressive in trying to court them. It's like, man, like that could have driven away a lot of great talent that we could have seen over the years as well.
Like exactly. Like I was lucky. Well, I'm not me personally, just again, not a woman. But when I was starting and sort of. Soon after I'd begun, Amy Lee, who's Dean Draven's wife, she sort of started to take an interest and started to like when women would come in, she'd sort of like grab them and pull them aside and be like, hey, just train with me and we'll focus on doing, improving your stuff. She's like Harley and Aurora, and sort of women like that. So she was there to sort of be a buffer. And so that was sort of like. That got a bunch of women, sort of possibly Shazza too. I forget the exact timelines. Because Shazza definitely came in after me because I helped break her in. That's my 0.00001% influence on her career. But yeah, so like sort of soon after that point, because like I remember there was a like when I in the second class, so like the first after I just started. In the first full class, like just after I had my first match, when they brought in beginners, there was this blonde, tall, athletic, perfect smile, perfect body, like the dream sort of blonde, blue-eyed wonder goddess, and she lasted 2 weeks, and it's like she didn't seem all the greats in Australian wrestling have to come through me at some point. Well, yeah, I mean, a lot of people like to see me in a locker room. They don't want to wrestle me. It's a common theme in my wrestling. But she was done after 2 weeks, and maybe that was purely because she decided that she thought the wrestling was too hard, or maybe it was a couple of the guys who were like constantly sort of watching her and hitting her up and trying to get her to go on a date. I don't know. I don't know the woman, but that sort of always stuck with me, and that's something that I've tried to avoid, and because I don't want to. I try to avoid becoming off as creepy or anything, and trying to like hopefully steer people away from that, and trying to be an ally in the common terminology. And obviously, that's not something that I can say that I am. I just it's something that I'm working at, and to let other people decide. But yeah, wrestling has changed a lot for the better. And I'm happy to see it, and hopefully it continues to get better. And I think, at the point where it is pretty good, but, again, there's always going to be some throwbacks and always going to be some stuff that is going to be a little bit, borderline. But if someone wants to come in and wants to do, an Indian gimmick, or wants to do a, whatever gimmick, and they want to make it part of them, they want to evolve it, then, again, as long as they're cool with it, and as long as they can sort of, work it into something that's more, modern and sort of not just relying on hackneyed stereotypes, then I'm all for it.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, like, bro. I got young kids, and I remember like it was about a few years ago when my older son was little, and like the Wiggles did a song called Papadum, and they're literally like, and I'm just like, dude, that has got to be the racist fucking shit I have ever seen. And one of my best friends is Fijian Indian, and his son is like a year younger than mine, like his eldest. And I said, hey, bro, does your kid watch the Wiggles? And he goes, yeah, that fucking Puppet Hum song is racist. I'm like, Well, shit, I'm glad you said it, bro. I was about to ask you your thoughts, and you gave them straight up. He's like, man, I don't fucking let my kids watch the Wiggles.
No, fair enough. Yeah, fair enough. Like, and again, it's like, you know, you can argue about, you know, oh, should they have known better, or, you know, was it innocent? Like, intent is, you know, less important as the impact and the result. And, you know, no one is going to be perfect 100% of the time, and that's fine if you make a mistake, as long as you own up to it, understand, learn from it, and do better in the future. That's all people want, from my understanding.
Yeah, no, 100%, man.
Yeah.
You know, I think that, you know, that's the way that I think how the differences is at, like, from, yeah, you look where it was like in the 90s to where it is now. Like the 90s was very much like a shock culture. Like there was nothing that you could do to be. You could sit there and say the most offensive shit in front of whoever the fuck and just go, no offense. And oh yeah, you're right, mate. No dramas. And people like not bat a fucking eyelid, bro. And like now it's like completely like it's almost like a 180.
Yeah, I mean, this is always the point where, like, you know, free speech advocates always jump up and down, and it's like, well, you know, back in those days, you know, people didn't say anything. Well, no, because they couldn't, because their voices were silenced. You know, it was back then. It was not, you know, if you told a racist joke.
I love Bucky.
Yeah, but no. Back in the day, the issue was not that you could say something and no one was offended. It's the fact that people were offended, but their opinion wasn't counted. Like it wasn't. It was just you know, oh, it's just a joke. It doesn't, you know, it doesn't matter if you're offended. You know, fuck you. So you know, and there were going to be people who want to weaponize it, and there were always going to be people who, you know, possibly take stuff too far in terms of, like, you know, looking for shit to be offended by and blah, blah, you know, all those normal caveats. At the end of the day, like it's freedom of speech should also comes with freedom. Does not come with freedom from consequences. And it's now that speech has consequences that they didn't have in the 90s. And WWE though is like the WWE is sort of the Attitude Era, which is sort of, you know, like was what I came in. I started watching in like 96, just before. So like, just like, well, like my memory of like just, you know, when I was a kid, I would occasionally see wrestling on like TV. Just, you know, when it was on what used to be broadcast occasionally on Wild World of Sports. I remember watching the '91 Rumble on sort of one afternoon. That just was cut up into like 5 or 6 sections and was played across the entire afternoon on Wild World of Sports. Like I have a memory of that, but I wasn't really a wrestling fan until '96 when, like, my family got cable and I was sitting down for the first time, sort of flicking through the channels, and then I saw this guy in brown and a mask with this weird piano music playing. He was limping to the ring and was like, "From Truthful Consequences, New Mexico, the wrestler formerly known as Cactus Jack, Mankind." And that was so weird. I was like, "What the hell?" And so I kept watching, and that's what got me hooked. But yeah, so I was there for like the feed into the Attitude Era and the NWO and all that stuff. And, you know, like culturally, that was, you know, that was seen as being, you know, acceptable in the terms of what they were going for. And then, you know, Russo was just ripping off Jerry Springer and ECW and all the typical sort of, you know, and the NWO was a rip off the New Japan angle and blah, 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 blah. But at the end of the day, it was like, you know, there was some stuff that was, you know, objectionable, sure. But the reason I maintain that the reason the Attitude was the Attitude Era was so big was not because of the titties and the blood. It was because you had guys like Austin and you had Rock who were like larger than life, had great personas, and you had storylines that sort of gave someone an outlet. Because it was like Austin versus McMahon, the typical every man versus the boss. And that was an angle that hadn't been really done before, and it was something that was new and different. And, you know, everyone wants to beat the shit out of their boss. Just, you know,
100%, bro. And, you know what? Like I've said this before. Like, do you remember when Austin brought out McMahon and put the gun to his head?
Yes.
And like the whole episode was like the lead up to this moment.
Yes.
Bro, I was like 16 years old. I for a shoot thought that we were going to see this guy get fucking iced on TV. I was like, let's fucking go. You know what I mean? Like at 16, I'm like, come on, pro wrestling's fake, huh? We're about to see this guy get fucking shot in the head.
And hell, we had like a couple of years beforehand, we had Pillman in the Pillman 9mm, so it wasn't outside the realm of possibility. But yeah, but again, like people sometimes take the wrong sort of idea from that era, and then they just assume that the violence and the blood and the titties was what made it good, and it wasn't. It was the storytelling, and it just happened to be storytelling that had blood and titties. Sort of, they're also to look in. And yeah, sure, maybe some people were there for the blood and the titties, and there's always going to be some people who just want blood and titties. And you can't sort of you can reach them, but you don't really want to. Like this, you shouldn't you should try and put out as a good product as possible, and if that involves blood or involves titties or involves both, fine, whatever. Game of Thrones was hugely popular until it wasn't. So yeah,
I think if you put that out there on your product, you know what I mean, like that thing, then that's what your audience is going to soon to expect. That's the kind of audience that you're going to attract, because like soon as those sort of people, half naked women, let's go to a show. You know what I mean? And then their mentality, they're not thinking of the little kid that's sitting next to them, and they're going to start screaming out, like obscenities and stuff like that. And then next thing you know, pro wrestling is just, gone back several years.
Exactly. It's like, again, like you don't want to. I don't want to. I don't want to harsh anyone's buzz, and I don't want to sort of the deathmatch has a place, and for stuff like Deathmatch Down Under and like the GCW when it's does GCW even do deathmatches anymore? Like do they still do that shit? So they kind of I don't know. I sort of know that I'm no longer doing. I used to do like Ask for One wrestling. I used to have to, and I had to pay attention to shit. I don't have to do that anymore. I just pay attention to what I like, so I don't have to sort of keep track of everything. But yeah, it's like that has a place, and if that's what you want to do, and that's what you want to target, you want to go for, fine. But that's never going to be the sort of the mainstream wonderfulness. And that's. There's certainly a debate as to the place of deathmatch wrestling, but again, there's an audience for it, and as long as the people involved are fine with it, then at least they have somewhere to do it, as opposed to just going over on to other shows and demanding deathmatch in that. At least they've got somewhere to go.
Cam, you feel like jumping in?
Well, I was actually going to say a little bit earlier, going back to something you said with when you very first started. Your the clothing. So you came out there in the shorts, the sweatshirt, that sort of thing. As Piers said, that was fairly run of the mill for indie promotions at that time. Yeah. So one thing, being 17 years in the business, what do you make of the evolution in terms of the professionalism and the gear and everything? Is it for the better, or what are your thoughts on that sort of thing?
Well, I mean. There are sort of I don't like to in pro wrestling. There is no such thing as a blanket rule, because there's always going to be a situation where it's different, and there are stuff like Tyson Reed and that sort of, and then like people playing those type of characters should not be coming out in $1,000 gear with shiny boots and stuff. They should be coming out like they come out. They should be coming out in shorts, t-shirts, and a fuck you attitude. So while there are definitely situations where people shouldn't look, because the idea is the wrestler should always stand out. The wrestler should always look different. It's like, not always. Not if that doesn't fit their character. However, generally, I do find that it wasn't like, while I was just like that, no, as far as I recall, no one else on the card was dressed like that. Like Super Crimson Mask had like the full body jumpsuit and the mask, and then they had guys like the JT like the Platinum Players had gear. Like, everyone else had like proper gear. It was just a case of I just had a match and I hadn't done no gear, so I wasn't expecting a match, and like I hadn't made it yet, and then I got someone to make it so soon after. But yeah, I think that like there was sort of, for the first couple of years, there was a lot of sort of like the High Spots gear and stuff like that. There was like the High Spots was the main sort of supplier for a lot of people, which is fine. A lot of it was a bit generic, but it was acceptable. But now you've got, there's a couple of, awesome makers of clothing sort of locally. I actually go to a woman in who does she normally does gymnast gear, and she likes me because I'm something different. Yeah, it's like just like for the females, a lot of the females I believe have get gear made by Madison Eagles, I believe does a lot of gear. And then there's still High Spots. High Spots still does gear, but there are a lot of sort of people who make gear who locally, who put out awesome stuff. And then you've got other places in America. Like now on the internet, it's a lot easier to get stuff made. And then you've also got like this in terms of like production values of shows and venues and advertising, because like going around and putting like posters up on freaking like posts and that, which some people still do, and it's just like we have better ways of doing that now. Like I think we've moved on from that. But that's the thing is it's cheap and easy, and you can just get a trainee to go out and do that. And a little bit of that is fine. Like a little bit of postage and select locations, fine, whatever. But like we're now expected to do more. Like you're supposed to have an online presence, and you're supposed to have like online advertising and put on a look professional. And if you don't look professional, at least have an explanation for it. Like if you're going to run, like underground or where anti-authority or whatever, fine, whatever. Make it you aesthetic. That's fine. But yeah, I am happy to see the production, the overall professionalism has gotten a lot better in recent years. At least with the sort of at least in the circles that I run in. And I'm very happy for it, even if sort of I stand out a bit more. But I mean, that's supposed to be a good thing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think I think over the years you've seen that definite change, in pro wrestling. And I've said before, like now, like because I was around like seeing shows in like 2000, 2001, 2002. And like you did see like some guys that just came out there wearing a lucha mask and tearaway tracksuit pants and a wife beater singlet.
Yeah.
And you're like, what the fuck? You know what I mean? Like, are you El Bogo or like what? Yeah, I'm not too sure what's going on. But I think now, like, you're seeing people take it more on a professional level than what you did years prior.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a lot for most. Like, it's a lot less of a sort of mess around, like chill, gimmicky sort of thing that you just do on weekends. Like now, people actually put in a lot of effort and a lot of time to improve themselves and to put on good stuff, and that's it's awesome. That's what you want, especially in a situation where we want Australian wrestling to be as huge as it can be, but as huge as it deserves to be, because Australian wrestling is fucking awesome. And I will, and especially because like I think that a lot of people sort of don't sort of just assume that it's like it's just going to be like the lowest of like American wrestling, or it's going to be on that level because with the population and whatever. But it's like Australian wrestling, like especially after I'd gotten a few years in, and there was a real sort of jumping off point. So just like after a few years. You had guys like Bonza and Hoffman and the Nations and the Eagles and all that, and they were sort of they came in, they started really to make an impact. That Aussie wrestling would take in the best of everywhere. Like you had American influence, you had Japanese influence, you had Mexican influence, you had European influence, and it was just like I think the Australian wrestling is a very unique blend, and Australian, and especially when you see Australians going over to America and they go to Japan. They sort of fit in almost everywhere. Like an Australian wrestler sort of can usually has had enough exposure to stuff where they can go in and they can work an American style match, or they can work a Mexican style match, they can work a Japanese style match, or they can work an Australian match, which is basically a bit of everything. And I think that that's wonderful, and I think that's why we should be a lot more huger than we should. Like Australian wrestling should be like Australian wrestling hasn't been on broadcast television since the 70s when it got kicked off 9. We should be on TV. Like I absolutely believe that Australian wrestling should have some sort of presence on broadcast television, even if broadcast television, maybe not as huge as it used to be, but we absolutely should. But obviously I'm not in a position to make. Funnily enough, I do not decide what's on broadcast television as much as I would like to. Believe me, if I was, the first thing I'd be doing is getting a hell of a lot of breakfast TV. But yeah, like Australian wrestling is fucking awesome, and I know that a lot of people know that, but more people should know that, and more people should be sort of get exposed to it. And I'm happy to see that it is getting there. It is getting. I don't know if Australian wrestling is ever going to be in a position to be on TV or whatever, but I'm happy to see how much it's grown in the past 17 years, and hope it continues to grow in the next 17.
Buckman says Q for broadcast TV commissioner.
Well, do let me know when the vote is cast, and I'll certainly make a pitch for it then.
Yeah, but I think if they put an Australian wrestling show on, say, Channel 9 on I don't know, like what's happening? Like, what's one night where at like 7?
Well, I mean, I feel that. Well, okay. My argument has always been that you've got digital television channels. So you've got like 7 Mate and 10 whatever they branded it now, like like one of them's Peach and one of them's something else, Bold, I think it is. Like you have these channels that need content, and you need like Australian content, and you can have live Australian content, live Australian sport content. Live Australian sport content, which instantly gives you 20 to 30 brand new stars that you can then put onto everything else that are different and interesting and unusual. So that's sort of my pitch, is that it's there's going to be a bit of investment, and there's going to be a certain amount of upstart, but you don't have you can have a weekly live if you want it sports program, which is always what people they want. They always want sports programs because that's stuff that people want to watch live. That's Australian, that's brand new, that's constantly going to be, changeable and sort of, and new and different. We've got a bunch of new stars that are going to be able to talk and go on to other shit and do cross promotions like the Wazoo. Yeah. That sort of has always been my thinking as to why that should exist. Again, will it happen? I don't know where people are. But I don't know what sort of the management of the various companies are trying to do, and that's not my job, obviously. But I do feel that is a market that is potential, and hopefully maybe one day something will happen there. And if it doesn't, then just I hope that Australian wrestling just sort of focuses on just like Fight. I'm not saying that like Fight TV and like all the other companies and like getting international streaming is not good. That's awesome. But I feel like having broadcast television just gives you a leg up in terms of like awareness, and will give you a lot more opportunities for people that may not exist right now. But obviously, there's a lot of variables on that. But that's certainly something that I've been thinking for a while now. But again, I have no idea if people are even sort of vaguely moving towards that. Which occasionally, wrestlers will get on. Like Peter Ray was on Studio 10 a few days ago. Yeah. There's the Beauty and the Geek appearance a while back. My appearance way, way, way back. Australian wrestling does occasionally get on TV, and that's wonderful. But yeah, I do feel that we should absolutely have some sort of Australian wrestling on commercial television. Whether or not that happens or not, then it's way out of my hands.
Oh, 100%. Did you say you were on Beauty and the Geek?
Yeah, I was on back in, it was about 10 years or so now. 10 years ago now. It was the first go round of it. So not the current sort of version. It was like the original version. There was actually I was possibly almost on it as a contestant, because I was at a Supernova wrestling in Melbourne. And the way it was told to me, because I was just talking, I think I was at the booth and I was talking to someone. I think it was Kieran Burns. But I was talking to someone, and I was sort of like facing the booth, and I was having a chat with someone. Supposedly, this woman was walking past, stopped dead, turned, and like the freaking Terminator was stared at me and walked over to me. And she was like, "Hi, I'm Namey McName. I'm from Channel 7, and we just have a chat." And we went and had a chat. And it was like, "So are you a nerd?" And blah blah. And unfortunately, I made the mistake. pretty much, it was pretty much one of the questions she asked. Like, are you just here for the, like, are you here for the wrestling? Or are you here, And unfortunately, I made the mistake of being personable and honest and had a conversation with her. And I wasn't awkward. And I wasn't sort of like, I didn't get bogged down in minutia. I just had a pleasant conversation with this woman. And she was like, oh, well, here's our details. We may reach out to you later. Blah, blah. And I never heard from them. Then a year or so later, they had an episode, basically the same plot as the episode from the Peter A, where it was like the beauties came up with gimmicks and costumes, and the Geeks had to wear them, and then had a little match. So we had a day of them, a day with them, and it's like so I asked them like while we were sort of starting to do like back bumps and stuff, because we had like a few hours basically to train them for like a 60 match. And I asked them, like, did they do any sort of prep work or anything? Like, they gave us the Rock versus Cena DVD to watch. It's like, okay, well, I mean, that's not the worst thing they could have done, but it's like, I'm not sure I would have chosen that, but whatever.
Doesn't that start off with "Don't try this at home"?
But they didn't try it before they got here. It was just to give them background, I guess. I don't know. But it was fine. Just like they're all sort of nice. They're all nice enough guys, and they all sort of paid attention and did their best. And like it just even like we were talking about, like one of them had, and I was like one of them. I was talking with a couple of them because like basically there were 7 of them, and so basically we each had, there was like 4 of us, and we each had, apart from one person, we each had 2 matches. So we had like 2 geeks we were working with, and I was talking to my 2. And I was explaining that, like, if you get into a hold and like you can hold, and you look and make sure that you should be looking up. And it was like one of them was like, oh, so yeah, there's people in the back can see your emotions and see your face. And I was like, dude, there were some wrestlers who still don't understand that. So just they weren't stupid. They were quite polite, funnily enough. But yeah, I went in there and I had I had the 2 matches. One of them, in the sort of the commercials for because they filmed it all beforehand. Like the commercials that were running for like 2 months before the show, like one of the spots was me picking one of the guys up and slamming him, which coincided with the beat dropping. So that was like, boom, boom. But yeah, we filmed it, and and I had 2 matches, and then the second one was the guy who won the contest, because it was basically who did the best job, and he won the contest, and then he ended up winning the whole thing. So I maintain that I won it for him. So he worked with me, and he won the whole thing. Therefore, it's mine.
A 5-star match.
Exactly. I did. Just like the first one was like he apparently the gimmick was that he was a dancer. He was also he was a scientist, but he'd also apparently in the show. I didn't watch it. I watched my bit. I didn't watch anything of the show after that. But like the thing was, apparently he was a dancer. So it was like we got in there, and then he was all like, yo, Q, I'm gonna, you may have the wrestling moves, but I've got the dance moves. And he danced, and then I was like, ah. And then I hit him and pushed him into the corner, and then was that he was supposed to move and he didn't. So I hit him, and then I told him again. He moved. Came off of like a diving crossbody, I think, and then I caught him and I slammed him and then I splashed him. That was it. The other one was like a guy who had like long hair, so he was playing like a Terminator character, and so like they each basically got 1 or 2 moves, but then they learned how to do that, and then we just sort of worked around it. So he did like a wind up punch, and then eventually I just choke slammed him, and that was fun. It's just like afterwards, like everyone was like, "Oh, how are the beauties? Like, did you sell to the beauties?" I saw the beauties for like 30 seconds. Like they came in just before filming. We did the filming. We took a group photo, and that was it. So I'm sure they were lovely, but I had no interaction with them whatsoever. But everyone else wanted to talk about the beauties. Like, sorry, I spent the day training the geeks. I had no stories about the beauties, unfortunately.
Yeah, because I think they did it a bit differently when they had when they did with PWA a year ago.
Yeah.
They had, I think the beauties and the geeks getting in there and wrestling. But like, if you got offered that opportunity to be like one of the geeks on the show, would you have done
it? Probably. Like back in the day, some of the guys sort of half jokingly were pushing me to be on like Biggest Loser, and that I had a problem with. because like I felt that that was like just like reality TV is not like reality TV. I'm not a huge fan of just because it's a bit too fake. Which as a wrestler is ironic. But no. Beauty and the Geek, like I don't think I would have fit in for what they wanted. Obviously, I didn't get past the first round. However, if they had asked me, yeah, sure, I probably would have thrown my head into that. Something like the Biggest Loser on that, no. But like if they contacted me, if someone contacted me tomorrow, I was like, we want to put fly you to, I don't know, dump you in the middle of the desert or something, or like. I'd have to look at the project, but I'm not adverse to it. But like I would feel that if we're going to put anyone on a reality TV show, it should probably be someone younger and someone sort of who needs a push in wrestling more than me. I
kind of felt like the Biggest Loser always had like a real negative connotation to it as well.
Yeah, and it's just especially when. Like pro wrestling does come with a lot of sort of mental challenges, and pretty much every wrestler has some sort of body dysphoria. Some people have it worse than others, and obviously it'll usually impact women a lot worse than it impacts men, unfortunately. But luckily, I'm a big fat guy. I'm aware of this. I've been a big fat guy for a while. I will probably die a big fat guy. That's fine. I've come to terms with that, and I accept that, and I'm okay with that. And like having some bloke sort of, wind down his window, like, "Oh, fatty." It's like, whatever. He's a fucking idiot. I don't care. It's more when people are like, oh, have you tried drinking water instead of soft drink, or like, have you tried maybe you should have a salad as opposed to like the people who try to help are the worst.
Yeah.
In my personal opinion.
Ask you.
Exactly. Are you my doctor? Are you my tailor? No. Whatever. So yeah, and stuff like the Biggest Loser, like exercise is not automatic. Like, yes, if you work out and take in less than you put in, usually you will lose weight. But not always. Some people's bodies just don't work like that. And this idea that it's a universal one-stop, like everyone can be fit if they want it to be. No, they fucking can't. That's not how bodies work. And could I be fitter? Yes. The amount of work and effort that would in my case to get to that point, I believe is not worth it, because I'm happy with I'm not. Am I happy with the way I look? I'm okay with it. Like, I'm not happy about it, but I'm not unhappy about it. It's just the way I look. And there are positives and there are negatives, and like anything. And I've accepted that. So stuff like Biggest Loser, that I do have a problem with it. I fought back against it hard then, and I would fight back against it hard today. If my doctor says you have to do this or you're going to die in 5 seconds or something, then maybe I'll consider it. But this idea that we should all be striving towards looking like Playboy models and workout pros, that's not physically possible. And I think the idea of trying to push everyone towards that is damaging.
But bro, like, I'm 5'6" and I'm 87 kilos.
Yeah,
I'm considered morbidly obese.
But yeah, I mean,
Bro, back in the peak of my training in 2012 when I was doing MMA, I had 6-pack abs. I walked around at 74 kilos.
Yes.
Shredded.
Yes.
5'6", 7'4", you're morbidly obese. And I'm like, I'm like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know what percent body fat I was, but I was like, I had fucking abs, dude. Like,
the body mass index is completely is only a valid thing for very specific circumstances, and the fact that it's been used by it's just been taken over and used for a whole bunch of shit is just horrible. It is a very specific tool for a very specific purpose. They don't even use it for that anymore. So we should just move the fuck on, because I think that there's always a situation where it's always the case of there's always at least 10% of the NBA players are technically morbidly obese, and it's like, you're going to tell them that? You're going to say that Shaq is morbidly obese? No. it's just it's a stupid measurement that doesn't work for what people use it for, and they don't even use it for what it was supposed to be used for. So we should all just move on. Like my weight is, as I said, my weight is basically just a numerical record of how much the Earth's gravitational pull is on me. That's all it is. And
like it's interesting because I had a doctor tell me, they go, with your BMI, he goes, you should be walking around 57 kilos. And I went, you're a fucking idiot. I said, you gotta be, I was like, are you fucking high? I go, dude, look at my back. Look at my chest. Like, look at my build. Yes. I am not a fucking. Yes. I'm a short stature guy. Yeah. I'm a stocky guy. Yeah. 57 kilos. I'd be fucking close to death, bro.
Which of my limbs would you like to cut off for that? It's like, it's fucking ridiculous. And that's an issue of, like, just outside of wrestling as well as inside wrestling. And like, I'm glad that wrestling has gotten to the point where I'd like to think that we're not quite as, like, there's always going to be some people who are going to be, body marks, and there's going to be some people who are like, expect everyone to look like John Cena and, Trish Stratus or whatever. And that's not going to happen. Or even like looking like, and it's useful. You should have a variety of body shapes and body sizes. Just because A, that's more interesting, and B, it allows for more diversity. And you want people to be able to see people who are like them, or at least can empathize with them. So that's part of what wrestling is. It's about getting people to empathize with you, or to empathize against you, whatever the case may be. So you want a variety of body shapes and sizes. As long as everyone can do it safely and everyone is healthy, for the rest of the value of the term, then there isn't a problem, and we should just accept it and move on.
I think in wrestling, as long as you can get in there and you can go and you can, like, do it safely, not hurt someone.
Exactly. Yeah.
It doesn't matter if you're 4'5" or 6'6" or 60 kilos or 600 kilos.
Exactly.
As long as you can go in there, you can do it safe. You know what I mean? I think as well, like, you can go in there and do it well to a certain extent, like on a majority of the shows. You know what I mean? Like, you have to have some level of ability at it. But if you're willing to put in the time and work, I think ability, comes from, dedication and training.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, there's the idea that you always see, like, I'm too short to be a wrestler, too tall to be a wrestler. No, if you work hard and you work smart, anyone can be a wrestler. Maybe not everyone can be world champion for WWE or AEW or whatever, but there is a place for everyone, and as long as you're willing to work hard and accept and know and accept your limitations and work with them, then there's always going to be a place for people.
But it comes down to how bad that person wants it as well. Like, they've got to have, like, they've really, really got to fucking want, to get into the business, or even to be a fighter, or like to be an actor, or whatever it is. I mean, like, it's not easy to get in the entertainment field. It's not like you wake up one day and go, hey, I'm going to be an actor. Hey, guess what? I'm going to be starring next in a Scorsese film. I mean, that shit doesn't happen. And it's the same with wrestling. You don't just come in one week and go, hey, man, I'm going to be main eventing of a show the week after. Bro, it takes time to really, develop. And if anything's worthwhile and you want it bad enough, you'll put the work in for it.
Exactly. Yeah, it's like anything. You need to sort of, like for wrestling or announcing or commentating or like anything involved with wrestling, like it is, people can have like natural advantages and can have they can have stuff that will help them, but at the end of the day, you've got to put in the work and you've got to try, you got to focus and you got to learn, and you have to sort of be you have to be the best version of yourself in order to really get ahead and to really sort of make do it right. But it's not like there is no set limitation on the type of people who can be a wrestler, as long as they're people who work hard and are willing to learn and willing to tough it out, because it is going to be tough at times, but the highs are worth the lows, in my opinion. Obviously, some people may disagree, and that's fine, and then they shouldn't be in the wrestling business, and they don't, and that's wonderful.
Yeah, and I think as well, it's like the level of importance that it is to some people as well. Some people go, yeah, you know what, I want to go train and be a pro wrestler. oh, I can go one day a week or 1 week this week. Now, it's just not a priority where other people will go, you know what, this shit is my fucking life. I am there 6 days a fucking week. And that's fine too, because it all comes down to what people have got going on in their lives. And as I said before, how bad do you want it?
Yeah, I mean, like, if, you know, and even if it's a case where like one person can only make it like 1 day a week and the other person can make it 6. If the guy who's making it 6 is just, you know, just going through the motions, just blowing it off, and just like not, it just is up himself, and the one guy who's only making his aim whatever 1 a day is focusing and learning and absorbing everything and learning as much as he can, and he or she can, then they're going to be a better wrestler. It's repetition. Yeah, exactly. Repetition is useful and repetition has its place, but at the end of the day, there's a mind. Like the body learns. The body will learn quicker than the mind. But if the mind does not learn it, then it doesn't matter how good the body is. Especially in wrestling, like you can get in there and have a technically gifted match and just go in there and physically do it. But if you're not thinking about it, you're just going through the motions, no one's going to care. Because it's just, you know, there has to be the emotional connection with the fans. And to get an emotional connection with the fans, you have to pay attention to them and you have to understand what you're doing. Because, like, again, going in there and knowing how to put on a hammerlock and knowing how to turn that into a side headlock and jumping off the top rope. Knowing how to do that is awesome, and you want to be able to do that, but you need to understand why you should be doing it, and when you should be doing it, and how you're supposed to be doing it. And like, maybe I shouldn't be doing this because I'm the bad guy, and I shouldn't be doing this because this is cool and going to get them to pop me, or I should be able. I have to sort of hold this in longer because they're really reacting. I should milk it, all that shit, and sort of like you have to. The mind is the most important bit of wrestling. Like, like when you're first starting out, cardio is king. Like when you're first sort of first becoming a trainee, I'd rather have a guy who can still can only know how to throw his clothesline, but can throw clotheslines after half an hour, as opposed to a guy who knows how to do a 450 splash, but gets blown up after 5 minutes. You should, like, cardio is the king at the start, but as you get along, the mind is the mental part is what really you need to work on. Like, the physical thing will just come in time, but the more you do the physical thing, the more you take the bumps and the more you learn, and the more you just repetition through it, you can grind that. The mind you have to really focus on and work on that, in my opinion.
Because I think like the bumping and everything like that, going through the physical stuff would fuck with you mentally at times, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. Like, I mean, I'm lucky because like throughout my training, at the time I didn't feel lucky because I always felt bad because what we were going through when we were going through spots and we were going through like the drills and that. I always had to do something different because I could never, like, I can't do roll bumps. I can't do flip bumps. So it always seemed like I was doing something slightly different to everyone else, which it did times make me feel like made me feel bad because it's like I was always trying to, like, people were always sort of having to change up for me and like do different stuff for me. I did kind of feel bad about it. But on the other hand, it's like eventually I realized that, well, it's because of my physical differences. But my physical differences pay off in the end because I can get in there and have a completely different match to someone else. Because, like I can go in there and have a match that, like Jordan and Moretti can't do my style of match because they can't go in there and do a match that I can do because they don't have the size and the strength. They can outwork me 99 times out of 100. And then I'll, most of the time I want them to, to have put on great matches, but I can do a match that they can't do. And so that sort of comes with my physical differences, and my physical differences need to be integrated. And I got over that sort of that hump of feeling like I was putting people out because I wasn't. I was just learning in a different way in order to, because I had to.
You were learning to work your body size,
exactly,
and that's what we were talking earlier. It's like you would never be expected to go and do a 450 or a fucking like a senton off the top rope. If you did it, that would be like, fuck, holy shit, that's a spectacular thing. But that's the sort of shit that you'd pull out maybe once or twice a year for a big fucking
yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. It's the sort of the WrestleMania move, like like the old story of how freaking like Terry Taylor, who was like in the WWE a few years ago, and he saw a video of Claudio Tassinelli doing the UFO, which is like the no-handed airplane spin, basically, where he just puts it down on his shoulders and he spins around, and he's able to do it without holding the die. This is incredible. And he went straight to Claudio. I was like, why the fuck? Why aren't you doing this? And he's like, because that's my WrestleMania move. So he kept it for WrestleMania. When he finally broke it out, hey Josh, but when he finally busted it out of WrestleMania, everyone went fucking mental for it. So yeah, obviously, if you can do something like that, then you absolutely should make it worth your time and really build up to it, and for a huge show that people are going to talk about. Not just don't bust it out sort of third from the top and a nothing show that no one's going to remember. But yes, I learned how to work with my body type, and that involved changes and differences, and that's fine. Just like anyone, people are going to have to learn how to use their body most effectively, and that's what I did, and that's what I'm sure everyone does. Everyone does now, and that's what we need. That's what you should be doing. You shouldn't be trying to force everyone through the same hole. The same shaped hole. Everyone should sort of learn how to use their talents and their abilities and their gifts and their weaknesses, even then, to the best of their abilities, and that requires differences at times, and that's fine.
Do you still do wrestling training now, like after 17 years in?
No, I should, but on the other hand, after a few years, it was getting to the point where, the worst injury was my shoulder, which technically didn't happen didn't happen in wrestling. There's a story behind that. But after a while, it got to the point where running drills was doing more damage than good. Just there was a period there where I was starting to my ankles were really starting to hurt, and I was getting every week there was something new damaged. It was never something serious, but it was always this week my wrist was hurting, or my back was hurting, or there was always something going on. So in the end, I stopped attending weekly training, and I'm sure that some people probably resented me for it, and feel that I should be putting in the work and all that. On the other hand, I've got everyone has a bump card, and the bump card has a certain number of bites. It's a number of bumps on it, and my bumps are a lot more impactful. I feel that I'm 200. I'm 200. I'm going to shoot 200 kilograms. I actually fought for the longest time. I was about 160, 170, but I'm actually a shoot 200, which I assume I've been for a while. When I take a bump, I take a bump. Yeah. And so at this point, at this point, I feel like I need to sort of conserve my body as much as possible. And I'm sure some people, probably some wrestlers who are here that are probably, jumping up and down about it, and that's fine. I understand that everyone has to train differently, and I feel that people should be training more. Wrestlers should train more, and wrestlers should train as much as possible. But I don't feel that I can physically, if I want to physically continue wrestling, I need to sort of conserve my body, because again, I've been doing this for 17 years. It's nearer the end. My career is nearer the end than it is the beginning. And I don't want to be in a wheelchair. And so if you don't have, if you want to jump up and down and yell at me about that, then I will happily take that. But at the end of the day, I have to look after myself first and foremost. So
your health is number one. It's your
exactly,
life.
yeah, exactly. So yeah, I haven't done sort of weekly training for a while now. But again, everyone has to sort of look after themselves, and if that if that means that I don't get sort of as much opportunities as other people may get, possibly, I don't know. I'm okay with that. I'll look after myself. And if anyone is going to sort of mark me down because of that, then I can't. Obviously I can't influence that. I can't change that, and that's fine. And I'll live with it. Because I know certain people don't like me. I know a lot of people in wrestling aren't huge fans of me, and that's fine. And some of them aren't I'm not a fan of some of them. Some of them I'm a fan of, and other people, we just we've met once and shaking hands and don't think of each other, and that's fine. You can't be expected to like everyone in wrestling, and I'd be worried if someone was, because that feels bad. There's always going to be some people that you don't get along with. There's always going to be some people that you have disagreements with. I've had conversations in a locker room where I'm just like, I completely disagree with your opinion, but it's not like, it's in a situation, but it's not like if someone were to start dropping, racial slurs or something, that I'd stand up and yell at. But if I'm just someone's, trying to think that, I'm trying to remember. I've had conversations where like people have been like, thinking they've had like certain opinions about like, the doll or like stuff like that, like political differences, and it's like, again, I don't have to like you to be able to work with you. Which is like, again, I'm not going to get along with everyone in the wrestling in the wrestling locker room. Not everyone is going to have the same opinion of me about stuff, and that's fine, as long as that opinion is not actively harmful or actively, sexist or racist or homophobic or anything like that. If it's just a difference of opinion, then fine, we'll ignore it. I don't need you to be someone I agree with 100%. And so, and I'm sure there are people who have the same opinion about me, is that they think I'm an idiot for having my beliefs or whatever, and that's fine. Because it's like as long as there is respect, and in the ring there is the level of trust that I'm able to put into that. As long as I trust you, I don't have to like you. I just have to trust you.
Yeah. Makes a lot of sense. But we are getting to that time, ladies and gentlemen. It is time for 60 seconds with Piers, baby. You know how this goes. We're going to start the clock. We're going to fire a bunch of nothing questions at Massive Q. He's got 60 seconds to answer as many as he can.
Okay.
Q, you ready for me to start the clock?
I am ready for you to start the clock.
All right, let's get it going right now. Snapchat or TikTok?
Snapchat.
Which Chris is hotter, Hemsworth, Evans, or Pratt?
Hemsworth.
Name a gross meal combo that you like that no one else does.
Oh God. Barbecue sauce on nachos.
What is the last book you read?
It's probably a Terry Pratchett Discworld novel. Probably Making Money.
You're the lead singer of a band and get to go on tour with them for 6 months. Which band do you choose?
Well, none, because I know I'm a terrible singer. They Might Be Giants.
Okay. Which board games do you always win at?
Well, none. Settlers of Catan, I'm pretty good at.
Aliens, real or fake?
There was other intelligent life in the universe, but we haven't met it.
What is something that you enjoy that you are embarrassed to admit that you like?
Nothing, because everything that I enjoy is fine.
Fair enough. Okay, and last one. In 5 minutes' time, you are being shipped to outer space. What 2 personal belongings do you take with you, excluding human beings?
Ideally, a teleporter and a replicator. If you want to say stuff that I actually have, then a mobile phone and a charging device.
So you want to take a replicator and what was the other? And a
teleporter. So, two different arguments there. A, if I'm going into outer space and that means that this technology exists and I want these 2 technology devices because they're awesome. Or 2, the second one doesn't matter. I just want the teleporter so I can come back home.
That's fair enough. That's actually, no one's ever given that answer. So that's probably one of the smartest answers that you could get.
It's like the people always say, what would you take to a desert island? It's like a satellite phone so I can get the hell off it. Just, I don't want to be alone on a desert island. I want to be in a city with people and
be
food.
In a 5-star hotel.
Exactly.
Service.
Exactly. The infinity pool, I can take or leave it. Room service. That's important.
Man, this has been a fun chat. It's like an hour and 30 minutes has just gone by, and it literally just has flown by.
I do tend to ramble if you don't stop me. Apologies to Cam for not letting him talk. But
I think Cam fell asleep halfway through.
I have that effect on people. It's fine.
I was doing some research while you were talking.
Oh yes,
So Stardom is the company that New Japan owns.
right.
Stardom is
Yes.
an all-female one.
Yes.
The Gobbledygooker was the one that came out of the egg, and then
Well, no, Aki Bono came out of an egg and hustle. I'm fairly confident of that.
And they were trying to rerun that angle later on. It was only a couple of years ago they were talking about rerunning a golden egg angle, but then everybody realized Vince was going a bit Vince. And then
is that the thing we had the egg that was like the crossover with the Rock movie and like Austin Theory stole, and that started the Austin Theory push?
That was it.
Yeah.
The other one was 1978 was when WCW Australia was eventually cancelled.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, I knew it was the late 70s.
Wow. Yeah, it's definitely been a long time. I think Australian wrestling needs to get back onto it. But
Absolutely.
guys, I think it's time for us to ride off into the sunset. Massive Q, bro. Thank you for being on, Cam. Thank you for being on as well. Q, where can everyone find you on social media and get some merch? You
can follow me on Twitter at Massive Q. I have a wrestler merch store that has some very cheap shirts, the Q Mark 1, and then also the fret level shirts, and hopefully some more coming up soon. So basically, Twitter is the best place. I do have a Facebook page that's, I assume, search for Massive Q on Facebook. I do have Instagram, but I almost never use it. I have a TikTok that I really don't use. And yeah, Twitter is the main one. Like Twitter, if you want to sort of follow my adventures, Twitter is definitely the place to go. I've got like a bunch of stuff that I'm sort of thinking about and working on to get out there. But if you care about me at all, follow me on Twitter.
Cam, what about you? Where can everyone find you on social?
I am on Twitter. I'm fairly certain it's elcamo1985. I don't really use it, but yeah, that's where I am. But if you want to follow the House of Free Fighting, which I'm generally always there, it's quite easy. So at Hoos OFF.
There you go. Make sure you go check it out. Follow Massive Q. Follow the Hoos, and follow El Camo on Twitter. As it always, this has been the Dad Bod God with Massive Q Cam, and we're gonna check you out on Shooting the Shit this Saturday, midnight Australian time. I'm going to be sitting down with international deathmatch wrestler Neil Diamond Cutter, so make sure you tune in for that. Anyway, we'll see you again very soon. Take care. All the best. Peace.